11 million Americans are mentally ill and living on the streets.
That's just a sin, if you ask me.
And it's only getting worse. Plus, she lost her 19-month-old daughter in a farming accident.
She saw Angie in front of the Bobcat. She was killed instantly that morning.
The founder of Auntie Anne's Pretzels and Beiler. All that and more on today's 700 Club Interactive. Well, welcome to the show. 3 years after Los Angeles voters approved a $1.2 billion bond program to build housing units for the homeless, an audit found that no units have been made available thus far, with only 19 projects under construction and only 2 to be completed by the end of this year.
Los Angeles and many other cities across the United States are struggling with the homeless, many suffering from schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and suicidal depression. What created this crisis, and what's the key to turning it around? Take a look.
Today's homeless crisis can possibly be traced back to the last bill signed by President John F. Kennedy. In 1963, the Community Mental Health Act closed America's insane asylums. While this law helped transform the often barbaric treatment of the mentally ill, it's also led to unforeseen problems.
Yeah, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I think that's a great example of deinstitutionalization.
Psychiatrist Kenneth Rosenberg says the sad consequence is people with those same issues often go untreated today.
That's just a sin, if you ask me, and that's something that we really have to correct.
About 11 million Americans have a serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, suicidal depression, or severe PTSD, which can render them utterly dysfunctional. In his book, Bedlam, An Intimate Journey into America's Mental Health Crisis, the author and filmmaker says these people ping-pong between the street and a jail cell.
Los Angeles is the epicenter of this crisis. The largest mental institution in this country is the LA County Jail. The largest collection of people outside is in Skid Row. Skid Row is kind of like a day hospital, if you will, for people with serious mental illness.
Add to this equation an estimated 8 out of 10 people living on the streets struggle with addiction. For the mentally ill, that's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
We know there are factors that can bring a mental illness out of the woodwork, open a window, if you will, on serious mental illness that would otherwise be closed. What are those factors? Poverty, trauma, going to jail. Unfortunately, most of the mentally ill end in jail nowadays. And above all else, substance abuse.
Although this perfect storm may seem hopeless, Dr. Rosenberg offers concrete solutions, starting with community treatment centers.
These are terrible diseases, but people can get better. They may not be curable, but they are very treatable.
Also expanding the number of mental health courts.
We can mandate treatment for people who are too sick to know that they need it.
And developing drugs that work better with fewer side effects.
The medicines we're using for serious mental illness today are 70 years old. I think that's absolutely terrible. God forbid you have breast cancer, God forbid you have colon cancer. You're going to get a treatment that's 2 or 3 years old, not one that's 70 years old.
For family and friends of someone going through this, Dr. Rosenberg says eating healthy, lowering stress, sleeping well, minimizing drug use where possible, and feeling connected all help minimize mental illness. Doctors say psychotic illness typically comes on between ages 17 and 21, and the longer the brain goes untreated, the worse it becomes. So early intervention is key.
And there are people in your community, in your church, in your synagogue, who could help you think this through. The clergy are very proficient in understanding how to deal with this, how to send you to the proper health care providers, people who will be consistent with your own spiritual practices.
So while America grapples with issues both past and present in treating the mentally ill, there's still hope by making it a priority and using a variety of treatments. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Well, it's certainly a difficult problem, but our major cities, particularly on the West Coast, are dealing with this on a daily basis. and you look at whether it's Seattle or Portland or Los Angeles, you're looking at major populations of the homeless. And how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this effectively?
Yeah, well, there have been for decades and beyond people who have been homeless and living on the street, but now it's like a city within a city is rising up, and it's not good. I mean, the repercussions of that are yet to be felt.
Yeah, and we need to understand the cost of caring for these individuals, whether that's in the emergency room or by the police force and in our prisons, is actually greater than the cost of let's put in some housing for them, let's have medical supervision as part of that, and how do we as a culture, as a society, solve it? But we need to solve it because it's out of control. Mm-hmm. Well, coming up, from college athlete to homeless addict.
It was destroying me as a person. It became too much.
See the wake-up call he never imagined when we come back. Jacob blew his chance at college. Drugs stripped him of his scholarship, and before long, Jacob wound up a homeless addict, hiding in a shed in his parents' backyard.
I had to strive to try to get the attention from my parents and try to be the best one in the family. So a lot of my identity growing up was based off of my ability to perform in sports and to be the best person, to be the best athlete I could.
Jacob Leckage was the youngest of 4 children. He grew up in a competitive environment, and his Catholic upbringing shaped his view of God.
I would say that I was a very religious person, so I felt like that I had to be the best person that I could possibly all the time, so that way that I would gain God's approval and gain God's attention and gain His love.
Attending a private school with his 3 older siblings provided Jacob an early opportunity to join the party scene.
My need for attention and my need to stand out all the time transitioned right into the party life, and that became the next way that I was getting attention from people, was just partying as much as I possibly could.
Jacob gained popularity, and he still excelled in sports and school. His appearance on the outside, however, was in direct opposition to what he was feeling on the inside.
The more popularity you get, the more that you need. The more drugs that I used, the more drugs that I actually needed to try to fill that void. And I constantly tried to be something and be somebody that I wasn't. And so as I tried to gain that love and that attention and fill that void in my life, I continuously lost myself even more and more in that process.
Jacob's performance in sports landed him a golf scholarship to a nearby college.
I knew that at the college golf level that I was gonna have drug tests and that was gonna be much more stricter on my behavior and the partying. So I actually did really well for the first couple months, and I was giving a really good effort to try to be better and try to take advantage of the opportunity to go to college.
Despite his efforts, Jacob got drunk at a party and used marijuana.
I very much remember sitting in my dorm room that afternoon, having to call my parents and tell them that I had just failed a drug test in college for smoking weed, knowing that they weren't able to send their other kids to college, and knowing that it was such a blessing and such a privilege for me to go to college. And that was a really, really hard moment for me to do that.
His drug and alcohol use cost him 2 college scholarships. He left school and pursued mixed martial arts fighting, where he again found success and attention.
I had a lot of recognition for being a fighter, and that was my identity. And it helped fill that void for the need for attention all the time. And it helped fill that void in my heart. But there was still, I can remember many nights, even after winning a fight and being successful the way that I thought I should be and doing the things that I thought that I should, many restless nights laying in bed of just that feeling of hopelessness and that feeling of depression and not knowing why I felt that way.
Jacob's introduction to pain medication began legally with prescriptions for numerous injuries and surgeries, but it soon took over his life.
I was physically very much addicted to it, but also mentally addicted to it as well. All that feeling of depression and fear and anxiety that have developed throughout my life, it would relieve those feelings. And whenever I was doing pain medicine, I felt like I was invincible, and I wasn't fearful, and I wasn't depressed, and I wasn't scared.
As the drug use escalated, Jacob lost his job and his home. He moved in with his drug dealer and started working for him.
I'd gotten down to about 119 pounds, which is really, really skinny. I was really physically in a bad spot there. It was destroying me as a person on the inside, to where the fear and the pressure of everything in life, it became too much. I no longer could handle it, even despite the pain medicine.
After being awake for 2 weeks straight, Jacob sneaked into his parents' shed and slept there for 3 days. When his parents discovered him, they took him to Home of Grace, a Christian-based recovery program. Jacob was still going through withdrawals from drugs when he experienced his first taste of God's love.
I woke up one afternoon, and there was about 30 guys had come into my room, 30 other clients and a couple of the staff members. They had all gathered in my room, and they all started to lay their hands on me and to begin to pray for me. And that was a very profound moment for me, because I couldn't understand why all of these people were in my room. I was in the lowest of the low point of my life at that point, and I had nothing to offer.
He began his journey to freedom with loving Christians who showed him who Jesus is. It all clicked one night in chapel.
The pastor that was there preaching, he gave an altar call after he did a sermon, and I knew that I needed to get up from my seat that night and make my way to the altar, and I needed to get down on my knees and give my life to Christ. And that's exactly what I did. And I got up, and I barely made my way up there. I was still very physically sick, and I got down on my knees, and I hit my knees, and I just told God that, God, if you can use my life, use it. I'm done. I am defeated. I knew that God had saved my soul in that moment, and I knew that I no longer had to fight anymore. I didn't have to fight to gain the love and to gain the attention from God, that God just loved me for the person that I was.
Jacob's life changed quickly. After completing time at Heartland Men's Recovery Program, he went on to get his degree in biblical studies. He now preaches at recovery centers across the country and spreads his hope in Jesus wherever he can.
I get to live and have abundant life today being a true follower of Jesus. And Jesus is, to me, the perfect example of how we are to live our lives, how we are to humbly lay down our lives every single day. And my goal and desire is to be an effective participant in the Church of God. And that's given me the blessing and the privilege to be able to speak and preach all over the United States at different recovery centers, to men and women that are going through the same things that I was going through, and to really show them that, that there's a hope and there's a future, and that God wants to do the same thing in their life that God has done in my life.
And he wants to do the same thing in your life. All you have to do is do the same thing Jacob did. Here he is in the middle of despair. He's gotten to the lowest of the low. He's down to 119 pounds. He's living in a shed. And he said, Lord, here's my life. If you can do anything with it, I'm yours. I'm done. I turn it all over to you. That's the complete surrender that God is waiting for from all of us. To say, not my will be done, but your will be done. When you get to that point of surrender, saying, Lord, I need you to take over because I can't do this. I don't have the willpower. I don't have the means. I can't, but I know you can, and I trust you. Here's my life. If there's anything you can do, would you take it? Could you change me? Could you remake me? If you prayed that with all of your heart, that's what Jacob did. He did it with all of his heart. I'm done. You can do this. If you do that, you'll get the same answer that Jacob did. And you see the transformation. It's nothing short of miraculous to go from hopeless addiction to a hope and a future and a destiny. And that destiny is you can go out and help other people. What an amazing thing. God takes you, he saves you so that you can save others. You can help others. If you want this, if you want a hope, if you want a future, if you want a new life, all you have to do is the same thing that Jacob did. Pray a very simple prayer and let God have control of your life. Pray with me. Jesus. That's right. Say his name. Say it out loud. Jesus. I come to you and I lay down my life. If you can do anything with me, I want you to. I give it to you and I trust you with my life and with my future. Forgive me of the things that I've done wrong. Set me free from these compulsions. Release me, Lord God. And if you do this, I will follow you all the days of my life. Hear my prayer, for I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Father, for those who just prayed, I ask for deliverance from any addiction. Set them free, set the captive free, for we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. If you prayed with me, there's one more thing I want you to do. I want you to call us and let us know. 1-800-700-7000 is the number. When you call, we've got a free packet for you called A New Day. And there's a CD teaching. What do you do now? How do you live the Christian life? It's all free. Phone calls free, packets free. Do it now. 1-800-700-7000. Terry?
Well, still to come, she's famous for her soft hand-rolled pretzels. But nobody knew what Auntie Ann endured before all her success. Hear the secret lies she held within. You don't want to miss her story. She's here live next, so stay with us. Auntie Ann became famous for her mouth-watering pretzels. Yet the secrets she kept hidden away were slowly killing her from the inside out. Take a look.
Ann Beiler, creator of the famous Auntie Anne's pretzel franchise, is known for her success. Yet what many don't know is the devastation she endured before it, when her 19-month-old daughter, Angie, was killed.
My sister was driving a bobcat and hauling sand, and as she was doing that, she didn't see Angie that morning, and when she turned the bobcat to go forward, she saw Angie in front of the bobcat. She was killed instantly that morning.
In her book, The Secret Lies Within, Anne recounts her story of loss, the years of sexual abuse she endured at the hands of her pastor, and how the power of confession saved her life.
With me now is Ann Beiler, and it's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Terry. I'm delighted to be with you.
You grew up in a loving family, but a family where, and a culture within the context of your family and your community, where emotions weren't overt. I mean, you didn't really talk about what was going on in your heart. You kind of just put on your boots and dealt with it.
Just kind of get over it. You know, I don't remember ever coming home from school and telling my mom that somebody was unkind to me, or we just didn't talk about those things. On the flip side of that was that as a family of 10, we talked about a lot of things, because around the dinner table night, it was like craziness and fun and you know, but somehow we missed out on this really talking about things that bothered us. Mm-hmm. And we pretty much just, you know, just kind of sucked it in and just kind of get over it.
And that is kind of the way of the Amish/Mennonite community. So it felt normal. I mean, nobody was doing it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now you marry your husband, you become youth pastors, and everything is going great. And then there's a tragedy pretty early on in your marriage. Mm-hmm. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, you know, Terry, I grew up wanting to be a good girl. I wanted I wanted to please my mom and dad, and I wanted to please God. And so I really wasn't prepared for tragedy. And September the 8th, 1975, that's a long time ago. Yeah. But I remember every detail like it was yesterday. Yeah. And so when Angela walked out of my front door of my little double wide trailer and was walking up to my mom's house for her second breakfast, which she did every morning, I watched her walk away and just turned around, and I thought, well, I'll call Mom and tell her she's on her way. And we lived out in the country, so it was safe, you know, yes. Mm-hmm. And when I reached for the phone, I heard all the crazy screaming, and it was like, immediately I knew. My heart knew that Angie was gone. I just had that
She had been run over really by a farm vehicle.
Yeah, my sister was driving the bobcat and hauling sand for my dad, and didn't see Angie that morning until she turned the bobcat around.
So here you are, not having learned how to express emotion openly, and now you suffer probably one of the most traumatic things a parent can suffer, a mother can suffer, the loss of your child. How did you deal with that?
Not very well.
Yeah.
I just did what I always did. And Jonas and I, we talked about the accident. We would talk about, what happened that day, but we really weren't able to verbalize how we felt. Like I would never have said to him, I'm really sad today.
Wow.
There were days I know that we would say, I miss Angie today, but there was never any feeling words, like just to really describe the depth of our feeling. And so we over time, just the Great Wall of China was built.
Yeah.
It was firmly in place and there was really no connection.
Yeah. So your pastor offered to come and help you walk through this. And what happened there?
Yeah, and we were living in a time in our lives where we were spiritually we were in a very relationship with Christ was just foremost in our hearts, and walking this journey with God that was unbelievable. Relationship versus religion. And in this place, it was a very vibrant church, and everybody loved the pastor. And when I went to see him, I was actually able to talk about my feelings. It was amazing. And before I left his office, he took advantage of me that morning. And I decided right at the moment that this would be my secret that I would keep forever. What I didn't realize was that secret was beginning to hold me hostage even then and kept me in a 7-year-long relationship.
Usually the perpetrator of something like that knows that there's a reason people won't out them.
Absolutely.
You went through years of abuse. What made you actually come forward?
Well, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I weighed 98 pounds, was falling apart from the inside out, was unhealthy, and was a terrible mother. I was emotionally absent from my kids, was in the house but emotionally absent. And I don't know, my desperation, I didn't know what to do, and believing all the time that I was certainly unforgivable, unlovable, and unchangeable. But I had the courage one day to get up off my knees and confess to my husband, which was the bravest thing that I'd ever done in my entire life up to that point, and took so much courage and just plain down guts.
Yeah.
Because I did not want to tell anyone.
But it was the beginning of healing, really. It was a small window that began to open, but it was the only light in the darkness that you lived in emotionally. It took a lot of courage to do that. You say there are 3 kinds of confessions that are significant in our beginning the healing process. Share those.
Absolutely. I learned that bedside prayers is always a safe place, and we do that in our pain, and it's the right thing to do, and Jesus always hears us. I stayed on my knees for 7 years and begged him to deliver me. The second type of confession is found in journaling, like David did in the Psalms, and we love him because he was so real and raw and honest, and that really is a very therapeutic, it's very good to be able to do that. It helps you through. But the one to another confession found in James 5:16 is the power, and that's what I began to live.
Well, one of the things that I think happens when you do that is when there's a secret and you think nobody knows it, you feel safe from the secret, but the shame that comes with all of that just builds and builds and builds. How did telling someone face to face, your Jonas was the beginning of that, your husband, how did that break the bondage of shame?
I don't understand the power of confession, but I'm telling you, it works. And the morning that I told my husband, there was something that happened to me inside. There was a spark of hope inside of me that I hadn't felt in years and years. I didn't think that was even possible. Yeah. But as I was able to just be real and raw and honest with my husband, that confession changed the trajectory of my life. And it's really found in John. He talks about bring your deeds into the light. If you walk in the light, as he is in the light, then you will have fellowship one with another. And then the blood of Jesus Christ cleanses us from all sin. It's all about bringing our deeds into the light. And that broke the power of my secret.
The power of the enemy.
Amen.
Fear and shame.
Absolutely.
He holds many, many of us there. Don't let that happen to you. If you're struggling with issues in your own life and you feel shame or guilt, get it out in the open. It's the beginning of healing. Learn more from Ann. Her book is called The Secret Lies Within, an inside-out look at overcoming trauma and finding purpose in the pain. It's available in stores nationwide. And thank you for sharing your story. It's always
my great pleasure, Terry. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us today. Here's a scripture we'd like to leave you with. It's Psalm 86:5. For you, Lord, are good and ready to forgive and abundant in mercy to all those who call upon you. Thanks for being with us. God bless you today. We'll see you again tomorrow.